Passion, purpose, possibilities. They're all right there. But sometimes we need a little push. And that's where SheSez comes in. Think of it as a master class taught by the world's most interesting women, sharing stories and ideas, because girlfriends help each other. This is SheSez with Linda Grasso. Hello and welcome to SheSez. My guest today is Byrdie Lifson-Pompan. After 20 years at the powerful entertainment talent agency CAA, Byrdie had achieved success. As an agent and a partner, she earned 7 figures, and she finally had the kind of job security that allowed her a little bit of freedom. She might have finished off her career there, but tragedy intervened. Her father became ill and was misdiagnosed with a bladder infection. By the time he was correctly diagnosed with prostate cancer, he was given 6 months to live. Then Byrdie got sick. A neurologist failed to diagnose what turned out to be a potentially deadly brain tumor. A second specialist correctly diagnosed Byrdie, and she underwent surgery, but she was left with partial paralysis on one side of her face. And then in 2012, her brother, who was diagnosed with tension headaches, but really had brain cancer, died. It was a pivotal point for Byrdie. She quit her high-powered job and in her mid-40s went back to school, ultimately becoming a private health advocate. Her firm, Clear Health Advisors, is aimed at helping critically ill people and their families obtain the highest level of health care possible, often as quickly as possible. Byrdie, thank you so much for coming in today. I'm so psyched to have you here.
Thank you.
I love your story on so many different levels. First, I have to address what I know everyone is thinking, and that is, holy cow, should I be like scared as hell, when you go in and get a diagnosis? Because we want to get into your story, but I know that all you guys out there, including myself, are thinking, how often are people misdiagnosed? I mean, in your family, unbelievable. What happened?
In answer to your question, 30% of the time, diagnoses are inaccurate or incomplete. And an incomplete diagnosis can be as bad as an incorrect diagnosis. So 30% of the time, those numbers are staggering.
It's just so odd, though, because, we sort of put doctors on these pedestals. They've had so much education, and we tend to think we trust them. Before we get into your story, do you think people should just automatically always get a second opinion no matter what?
You should always get a second opinion, always. You wouldn't paint your house without getting 2 or 3 estimates, and yet you'll take a drug that your doctor tells you need for high blood pressure or cardiac issues without getting a second opinion. It just doesn't make sense. And while I have unbelievable respect for physicians and I know that they've dedicated their lives to doing good, they're human beings, so they make mistakes. And protect yourself, not from them, but from human error.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about you. It's 2012. You lost your brother. Now, at that point, your mom was still alive, right? No, your mom had passed away as well. And she, just to give a synopsis of her health story, in the middle of all this, she had a respiratory illness and had just trouble getting into a long-term health care facility.
Correct.
So you were grappling with that. Boy, these things must have been, they obviously were life-changing for you.
Yeah. I used to think that I could handle anything and that all of my clients' issues were immediate needs. But wow, immediate needs takes on a whole new level when you're dealing with healthcare issues. And it is amazing, the statistics in my family. But like I said, 30% of cases, misdiagnosis, medical error and misdiagnosis is a third leading cause of death in our country.
So let's talk about you in that year, 2012. Tell me where your head was. How were you, were you sort of feeling yourself check out a little bit at CAA? Were you feeling yourself pull back, not be as passionate about it? Obviously, I'm assuming it wasn't just a light bulb moment where you're like, hey, guess what? I'm going to start a firm. Tell me about that evolution.
Well, obviously, if any of my clients are listening, I never pulled back. I was always 100% on it and available and working hard for them. But of course, not only were my family members becoming ill and very, very sick, but I also was a mother and had 2 kids. And fortunately or unfortunately, with my own situation, was able to really feel that reality of this is it. We get one shot here. I mean, nobody knows what happens after this, and how am I going to live my one shot? And I just ultimately didn't feel like the work that I was doing, advocating for my clients to make millions of dollars, to make movies or television shows, while that's really important for our economy, it wasn't important for me personally anymore. And I was just having trouble getting up and going to work every day while I was also handling my brother's illness and making sure he was well cared for. And I would say his illness was the straw that broke the camel's back, truly.
And why was that particular one so?
Well, I do have another brother, so I don't want to make it sound like I'm all alone in the world. But because my father had passed, my mother had passed, and now my brother was so sick. And I had taken him, he had always dreamed of going to Israel. He was a rabbinical student. And so I took him to Israel. And I think just being there, and not necessarily Israel, but just being outside of my own element and being in another country, freed me in a sense that I think is hard to do when you're in the environment. I really had to get out of it to realize there's so much more to the world and my life and opportunities.
So did you quit your job before you'd come up with what you wanted to do, just to give yourself a breather?
Well, I kind of had an idea because I essentially was agenting for my family members. I was agenting for sick people. And what started to happen is, because I'm a certain generation, what are we, the sandwich generation? Friends would call me when their parents started to get sick, or their aunts or uncles or grandparents, because they knew that I had that experience, which led to expertise in how to navigate the system. And I realized when they started calling me for advice and how to get into a doctor's office sooner or how to get to the best hospital, that there were people that needed me, and they weren't just my family members, and that it was my same skill set as an agent that was needed in this realm that didn't really exist.
So you must have gone through like a serious thought process, though, when you thought about quitting. I mean,
I did.
I'm not just talking about the money, which had to be so great.
Which, yeah, no. And I love money. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do. And I love fancy things. And I loved everything that life provided, not just the money, but the experiences, going to any concert I wanted to, getting, third row seats to any play I wanted to go to.
It was a good life.
It was a great life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm grateful for it.
So did you have a conversation with your husband? What was the sort of catalyst, the jumping off point for you when you were really able to pivot?
Well, if my husband's listening, I'm going to say I first had a conversation with my husband, but I'm quite certain I had conversations with my best girlfriends. I mean, I don't have sisters, and my girlfriends are truly like sisters to me. I think if you grow up in a home with only brothers, you form special connections with your girlfriends. And my girlfriends were at each of my childbirth. They were bridesmaids in my wedding. I mean, my best friends have been my best friends since I was 13 years old. And I talked to them first.
And obviously, was their reaction immediately positive? Was there anyone who said,
and
hey,
every
slow
one of
down
them.
there, this sounds nutty?
No, one rightly said, oh, Bruce is going to be really upset about
Your
this.
husband.
Yeah, my husband. So, and my kids. I mean, my kids loved going to movie premieres. That it was fun. It was a great life.
But by that time, they were teenagers, and they were just sort of starting to take off on their own, wouldn't you say?
Right.
I mean, it was kind
and
of the
not really
timing was
talking
right.
to me. I guess getting them to go to premieres was a way to get them to be with me. But
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no,
I
exactly.
take time where I can get it.
Yeah,
too.
exactly. Yeah, I gave it some thought, but to be honest, I probably didn't give it the kind of thought that you should give making a career change like that when you have a great career. But I think if I had given it more thought and made a list of pros and cons, I never would have done it, because on paper, it just didn't make sense.
So at one point, you decided you were going to have to go back to school. You'd quit your job. You were moving on.
Right.
Wow. That had to be a little daunting.
It was a crazy time. I had already partnered with my current partner, who's a physician. And I realized that when we were talking to people, everyone they'd engage with us, but they'd look to her for every answer. And ironically, she didn't have the life experience I did. I mean, she's blessed to have two parents who are alive and siblings who are healthy. And while she's a physician and she's married to a physician, she's witnessed tragedy, but has not experienced it. And so I realized that I had credibility to a certain degree. And then I really didn't because I had no healthcare experience. So I looked for programs that would allow me to go back to school. I was 48 at the time. That would allow me to go back to school, but also start this business. So it wasn't a full-time program.
But it was Brown University.
Yeah, I went to Brown.
I remember when I talked to you in the middle of it, the one thing you said is, I'm the dumbest person in the classroom.
Oh, yeah. No, it was
I'm sure wasn't true.
22 people in my program, 17 of them were physicians.
Oh, wow.
So for most hospitals and large institutions now, if you want to run a department as a physician, you need to have an MBA. Because they want you to understand the checks and balances of running that department. And so a lot of these people, while this wasn't an MBA because Brown doesn't have a business school, it was the equivalent to an MBA in healthcare. So that's why a lot of these physicians were in the program.
Was that a worthwhile program for you? I mean, did you feel you really enhanced your knowledge?
I just was blown away with the statistics that I encountered while I had, experienced a lot of them. But I had no idea that medical error was the third leading cause of death behind heart disease and cancer, obviously, but that it was running so rampant, that it wasn't just in Los Angeles or just in California, that it was all over the world. And these physicians in my program were practicing physicians. They were still going to work every day. And they were working within a system that didn't reward them for taking time with patients. It rewarded them for quantity of patients served. And that ultimately is it's not why people go to medical school for the most part, but they're trapped by this system. Mm-hmm. And we'll see what happens with this system.
So when I look at you and knowing you like I know you, a super capable woman, super smart, highly skilled executive, able to deal with people, was there anything in you that doubted you could pull this off, starting this firm? Because again, this firm isn't a known quantity. It's not like you could point to 20 across the country and sort of know what their success record, success failure, their, what the profitability curve was going to be probably in the first 5 years. I mean, you were really, this is kind of uncharted territory. It was unique. I mean, I'm sure there are other firms in the United States that do this, but very few. And you were going off into sort of a area with a lot of question marks. Was there any part of you that grappled with self-doubt or fear of the unknown?
Of course. I mean, I'm human, of course. And like I said, if I had thought about it more, I probably wouldn't have done it because it didn't make sense. I had an aspirational career. I mean, I experienced situations that people dream about. And I was going to give it all up to help sick people in a world I didn't really understand. And if it wasn't paying the doctors, how was I going to make a living at it? And I wanted to make a living, but I also wanted to do well. I wanted to do good. And I wanted to create a way to make a living by doing good. And I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive. And I think I've figured it out.
So the journey has been a good one for you. It's been fulfilling. Are there any surprises? Have there been any surprises or stumbles or bumps along the road or learning experiences? I mean, has it been completely smooth sailing since you launched?
Absolutely not. No, but I will say the foundation of our company, my mission and my partner, that has served us to keep on going even when we've hit rocky roads. She is really committed to helping people.
And we should say her name is Dr. Valerie
Dr. Valerie Uline, and she's
an internist by
her focus was preventative medicine. So she was always about keeping people healthy so they didn't get sick and need you. But she's been an incredible partner, and I think that's hugely responsible for the success of our company. Our business has been built entirely on word of mouth. I mean, I guess you could consider this advertising, but
no, it's not.
Okay. Okay. And I've done this is my first ever podcast, so yeah. I'm going to say my first ever live personal conversation. But we haven't really done marketing or advertising. It's all been word of mouth. And that makes me feel good too, because our clients come to us when they're really sick. They have stage 4 lung cancer. They have stage 4 liver cancer. They're really, really sick. And they don't all get better. I mean, that's just the reality. We're not miracle workers. We just help you get to the very best specialists for your diagnosis anywhere in the world. And so the most satisfying part of our job, I would, on many levels, is that even when we lose clients, because we do, their loved ones feel like everything that could have been done, anything humanly possible, was done for their loved ones. And the peace of mind that they have, you can't put a price tag on that.
It's so interesting when I look at, your journey, it's evolved in such a natural way, because I think really, as with all of us, there's no way you can get to where you are in life if you hadn't had that earlier career. On the one side, maybe there's something about you that says, wow, I could have been doing this 20 years ago, and that would have been so cool, and imagine where you and your firm would be now. But I don't think you would have gotten where you are now without your agency experience and having sort of had those kind of experiences with clients and skills and high power executives. It led you to where you are now.
Absolutely. And one mantra that Richard Lovett, who's president of Creative Artists Agency where I used to work, always said, the most important things start with no. So your job as an agent is to get to yes. And I don't care how you do it. Figure out a way and get to yes. And I encounter that every single day in the healthcare system. We identify the right physician, but he's not taking new patients. We identify the most appropriate specialist, and she has a 3-month waiting list. And because of my background, I'm the first to say, well, what time do they start clinic in the morning? Oh, they get there at 8? Okay, we'll be there at 7:30. You show up, they don't turn you away. I don't like to make a habit of it, but when you need to get to yes, you figure out a way to get to yes. And these people are dying. So you have to figure out a way to get to yes.
What was the point in your career, your second career trajectory, where you sort of went, wow, I'm onto something. This might work. I mean, did you ever look at Val and, you got a big client or something, or you really solved a problem for a client and you thought, you know what, we're right. This is needed and this is going to work for us?
Both, in answer to your question, honestly. Yes. Helping an individual and getting positive feedback from their loved ones about the job we did, like I said, even if we lost the client, was really meaningful. And the individual clients is sort of how we thought we'd run our business. But then like with a lot of things, it took this sharp left turn that we weren't prepared for. And we were approached by a company who said, we really love what you're doing, and we want to offer your resources to our executives so that when they or their loved ones are hit with a diagnosis, they don't have to miss work, or they can miss less work, or they can get the best care because we care about our employees. And that was our first wow, quoting Oprah, aha, like people do want us, people do need us, and companies will pay for what we do. We are valuable, not just to the individual, but to the corporation.
How has your family reacted to this new career switch? Are they still pissed that you're not giving them tickets? Or I'm just kidding. But I mean, have your boys, I know you have 2 sons. One is, I think, in his last year of high school, and the other one's in college, same age as my son and friends with my son. It must be kind of cool for them to see you pursuing your dream at this stage in life. I mean, sometimes I feel like we raise kids to think that only they dream and we hear about their dreams.
Right.
But in a way, this was sort of a dream that you had, and that you concocted it off of like nothing with no basis really, and you made it happen. How have they reacted to that? Have they noticed?
Absolutely. First of all, I'm home a lot earlier every night. And so I'm a terrible cook, so I wish I could say I'm home every night to cook dinner, but I don't cook.
But you pick it up on the way home.
Yeah. I make sure there's food on the table, however it gets there. It starts with no, I have to get it to yes. But they're really proud of me. I mean, while my 18-year-old probably wouldn't say that out loud, I know that they are. They see that I'm making a difference. And my older son is actually working as an intern at CAA this summer in business development. And part of their internship program is they meet with other agents and executives in the company. And my former colleagues, every single one of them has told my son how amazing his mother is and how they applaud the turn that I took. Because most people leave the entertainment industry because they're not really relevant in that business anymore. They haven't grown with the changes of the business, or they just don't want to do it anymore. I left to do something completely different. And it wasn't a conflict with my former career. I didn't leave to go to another agency or to be a producer, but I left to do something really different. And they recognize, they lived through everything that I went through personally. And so I don't think it was such a surprise to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been incredibly supportive, obviously, with, clients. They've been a great resource for us.
So I have to just point out that even though you say you get home earlier, you're still working really hard. It's been hard running your own company.
It absolutely.
And I just know that from talking to you over the years.
Yeah.
You're like, whew,
It is hard.
I don't want to underestimate that to other women who are listening and pondering a career switch and owning their own company. It's hard work.
It is. And I just want to go back to something you said about this always having been a dream of mine. It really wasn't. I didn't have this dream.
No, but you had it. Well, I was simply referring to it being even in a short.
Yeah,
You could look at you during that 1 year where you were percolating and saying, she's got a dream. That's what I meant. No, I know you weren't dreaming of that.
Yeah.
I knew you before.
Yeah, exactly. I was
there was no dream about working in healthcare.
Yeah, working in healthcare. Absolutely. There was no dreaming of going back to school.
No, but you made your dream come true.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't percolating for years, it was, a shorter period of time. You made something happen out of nothing. That's what I meant by dream.
Yeah. And I have to say, a lot of the people in my program were envious, even because most of them had been in healthcare for 25 years, whether they were physicians or with pharmaceutical companies. And when I said to you I was the dumbest one in my program, please trust me, I was the dumbest one in my program. I was surrounded by scientists, physicians, people who knew this world. It was like being immersed in, a program learning Mandarin and you only studied Spanish.
Was it hard doing all? I always remember school as having so much memorization and having to concentrate for really long periods of time.
For tests, a number 2 pencil.
Yeah.
Yes, it was hard. And I remember saying to my husband one night, I was crying and I said, I'm just too old to learn how to use Excel. I just couldn't do it. I'm too old to take accounting and finance. But you just put one foot in front of the other and you somehow, kind of like raising a child, you just put one foot in front of the other and hope for the best.
Exactly. And you just don't know how it's going to come out.
You just don't know.
So what did you learn about yourself? You seem like a pretty evolved woman. You seem like you know yourself pretty well, and you did before as well. But were there any revelations? Did you learn anything new about yourself?
I learned that I really need structure. I can't just work from home. I'm not as productive that way. I really need a place to be and a schedule for my day and to know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, because it's really hard to run your own company. If you don't want to go to work, nobody's saying I'm going to dock you for the day or, you're fired. It's really up to you to get up and go out and make stuff happen. And that was the most revealing thing for me, that I really need motivation a little bit to get through the day, and that I do by making a schedule for myself.
And you stick to it?
Absolutely. I'm incredibly rigid. Ask my husband. I am incredibly rigid.
Well, at least you figured out what it is that works for you, though, and you've crafted it. The tough part is when you can't figure that out.
Yeah, well, and my partner is the polar opposite. She's never made a schedule in her life.
Wow, to this day?
To this day, literally, it's the only thing we fight about.
But it works for her.
Completely. And if she were like me, we would probably not still be partners. But I'm always anticipating the worst case scenario, because that's what I had to do for my clients. I'm anticipating them not getting the job or losing the job or, so I'm always anticipating, what do we do next? Okay, we've set up that second opinion, but when they get a differing opinion, do we need to set up a third opinion? Or if it's supportive, well, then where are we going to get the client treated? Are we going to move them out of their home, geography, move them, get them care in another state, another country? I mean, I anticipate all of that. And she is much more, let's deal with today.
So, Byrdie, we end every episode of She Says with what I call 3 takeaways. And those are 3 things that women can think about after the episode is over. Sort of like wrapping it up, 3 things that I think that you bring to this that they can think about in terms of how to apply them to their own lives. So I think one of them that I heard from you was tap your network, talk about it. And I think that's really important because I think a lot of women get stuck in their heads. They have ideas, they percolate, but they don't share. I mean, even in doing this podcast, this woman that I know named Deborah has her own podcast. I hadn't talked to her. We used to work together at Fox 20 years ago. I tracked her down. I got her email. I mean, I've talked to her since, but very little. And I went and started meeting with her and telling her my idea before I told even my inner circle, because she had a podcast.
Right.
And it was changing for me because she basically looked me in the eye and said, you can do this. This is within your realm of capabilities. And you tapped your girlfriends because you trusted them and you confided in them. They might have said, you nutcase. That's the craziest thing I ever heard. So that's one that I got from you. I loved what you said about get to yes. So start with no. No doesn't mean no. Turn the no into a yes.
Right.
Is that one of the most important points you agree?
Yeah. I also say no is always the word now without the W. Like it's not really a word in and of itself.
I love
it's
that.
Now I take action because I didn't like the NO part, so now I'm taking action.
So give me a third. What's a third takeaway that women should learn and think about from your story?
I would like to say something incredibly profound, like always believe in yourself. But the truth is we don't. We take care of everyone else, and we're the last ones that we believe in. Talk to your friends, as you said, first and foremost, but also listen to that inner voice. And for me, think about what's the worst thing that could happen. What's the worst thing? I quit my job. I've sacrificed that income. That's pretty bad. I've given up my fabulous leased car. That's pretty bad. I'm now flying coach.
You're still getting over
Not so
all this,
great.
by the way.
Yeah.
She still tells me
I'm still
how hard it is.
Yeah, I'm flying coach. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? My business, it wouldn't take off. That's the worst that could happen. I'm still healthy. I'm still the mother of 2 boys. I'm still married to Bruce. I still have dear friends. I think we get stuck in can I do it instead of really thinking about what if I do it? What if I do it? What's the worst that could happen?
I agree. And just to sum it up, something I've been thinking about a lot lately is greenlight yourself. We're always waiting for people to greenlight. We're going to men who run companies and people with more experience, and we're seeking approval and wanting them to greenlight us, to validate us. Sometimes you just have to validate yourself.
I think that's really hard.
Yeah.
And I've heard a lot of successful women say, you can't have fear because fear will prevent you from doing what it is you want to do. I don't know any woman who started her own company that was not fearful. I think it's, for me, I can't even imagine not being fearful.
Yeah, accept it. Fear is part of the equation.
Exactly.
You're going to switch it up. You're going to, there's going to be moments where you're going to have trepidation. I think owning that and accepting it is all part of it. Byrdie Lifson-Pompan, I have loved having you. Thank you so much for joining us. Your story is so inspiring to me. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I so appreciate it. Subscribe to SheSez on SheSez.com, iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. And do leave a comment. We're new. This is our first season, so we are really counting on feedback. Good, bad, ugly, just share. Thanks again.